When we think of art, we often focus on subject or style, but the materials themselves, stone, clay, wood, metal, even resin, play a huge role in shaping meaning. Materials aren't neutral, they carry value, symbolism, and cultural power. Let's start with how materials are valued. Intrinsic value comes from rarity and natural properties. Gold, silver, and gemstones are prized because they're rare and physically enduring. Cultural value is assigned by societies. A material might not be rare, but if a culture deems it prestigious, it gains importance. Think of silk in China or marble in Renaissance Italy. Added value comes from process and context. A simple clay vessel becomes invaluable if tied to a historic dynasty or crafted with extraordinary skill. So materials are never just what they are. They gain layers of meaning through culture, use, and history. Clay tells one of the longest stories in art history. Early pottery was made by hand for storage and cooking. Around 3000 BCE, the invention of the potter's wheel revolutionized production, allowing thinner, more uniform vessels. By the Ming dynasty, from 1368 to 1644, porcelain had reached a level of refinement so advanced it became globally known as China. Its delicate translucency and bright glazes made it one of the most prized materials in the world. The journey from Neolithic pottery to Ming porcelain shows how a humble material, transformed through skill and innovation, can become synonymous with beauty and cultural identity. Porcelain's story didn't stop in China. It changed Europe, too. In the 16th century, Portuguese traders brought Chinese porcelain home, sparking demand among Europe's elite. Then, in 1708, alchemists Tschirnhaus and Bottger discovered the European formula, producing porcelain for Augustus II of Saxony, who, honestly, filled entire rooms with it. By 1717, factories in Vienna and beyond began competing, spreading production even further. In the 19th century, porcelain reached America, where it became a staple for commemorative and heirloom objects. Porcelain was more than a ceramic. It became a symbol of taste, wealth, and really the globalization of art materials. Some materials directly signaled authority. Take imperial purple porphyry, a rare marble used only by Roman emperors. When the quarries closed, later rulers recycled old porphyry columns and sarcophagi to claim that same aura of power. Constantina's porphyry sarcophagus, from 354 CE, blended pagan and Christian imagery, symbolizing both faith and empire. Centuries later, Charlemagne and Holy Roman emperors reused ancient porphyry in chapels and palaces to assert continuity with Rome. In this way, the material itself, not just the form, was a political statement. This practice of reusing materials is called Wpolia. Charlemagne built his Palatine chapel using pillaged porphyry columns. Henry II incorporated Egyptian ivory into a lavish pulpit. Frederick I commissioned the Barbarossa chandelier with reused elements. The Cross of Lothair even set a Roman cameo of Augustus at its center. Spolia wasn't about recycling, it was about borrowing prestige. By reusing sacred or imperial materials, rulers visually connected themselves to past empires while claiming superiority. Not all materials of value were rare. Wood, a common substance, carried deep meaning in different contexts. Medieval lindenwood was prized for religious sculptures because its fine grain allowed intricate carving. These figures were then painted to appear lifelike. 18th century mahogany, imported to England and Scotland, became a luxury material for furniture, symbolizing wealth and global trade. Arts and crafts oak, during industrialization, symbolized honesty, craftsmanship, and a return to natural beauty. Even an everyday material like wood could become charged with cultural values of faith, status, or ideology. Another fascinating example is lacquer, derived from the sap of Asian trees. On its own, resin had little value, but the process of turning it into art was extraordinary. Craftspeople applied up to 200 layers of lacquer to a wooden surface, often tinted red with cinnabar. Once hardened, these layers were carved into intricate scenes. The result was dazzling objects that embodied patience, skill, and cultural pride. A single lacquer tray might represent hundreds of hours of labor, transforming resin into a symbol of refinement and endurance. Metals have also shaped art's meaning. As raw materials, gold, silver, copper, and iron were valuable trade goods. Through forging and casting, artisans mastered some of the earliest complex processes. Bronze and brass became ideal for public monuments, durable, detailed, and weather-resistant. Finished works symbolized wealth, empire, and achievement. From bronze statues of Roman emperors to modern memorials, metal remains tied to permanence and power. Finally, we can't ignore the ethical questions materials raise today. Ivory carvings, once prized, are now rejected because of endangered species. Rare woods raise sustainability concerns as forests vanish. Toxic pigments once used by painters can harm both artists and the environment. In response, many contemporary artists deliberately choose recycled or common materials. Their works critique consumerism, highlight waste, or question traditional ideas of value. Today, the material itself often is the message. So, what is the significance of materials in art? They shape value, identity, and power. They transform simple objects into cultural treasures, and they force us to confront ethical choices about beauty, consumption, and responsibility. In our next video, we'll explore how these foundations connect to larger art traditions and movements.